3 million people are gone. Read that again. Not relocated. Not on extended holiday. Not working remotely from somewhere temporarily more convenient. Gone. Formally, administratively, irreversibly gone. The visa cancellations are filed. The school withdrawal forms are submitted. The lease termination notices are served. The business deregistration papers are lodged with the authorities that issued the registrations. 3 million people in a city of 4 million. Gone. And nobody is saying why. That is the secret. Not the departure. Departures can be explained. Departures can be managed narratively. And departures can be framed as transitions and repositionings and the natural evolution of a dynamic global city whose resident base has always been fluid and whose fluidity has always been a feature rather than a vulnerability. The secret is the silence. The specific, deliberate, institutionally coordinated silence of a government that has built its entire economic model on the narrative of arrival and is now confronting a departure of a scale that the narrative cannot absorb. The silence of developers who cannot acknowledge vacancy rates that would collapse the pre-sale market for their next project. The silence of financial institutions that cannot acknowledge outflows that would trigger the counterparty reviews they have been managing by not discussing what triggered them. The silence of airlines that are reporting load factor data to their revenue management systems, that the revenue management systems have no historical precedent for processing. The secret leaked 2 hours ago, not through a press conference, not through a government announcement, through the specific failure mode of very large secrets, the moment when the number of people who know the secret exceeds the number of people who can be relied upon to keep it. 3 million expats are gone. And what comes next is the story of why, and why nobody wanted you to know. The first question is the obvious one. How does a city lose 3 million people without the world noticing? The answer is architecture, and not the architectural kind. Not the glass towers and the artificial islands and the record-breaking structures that Dubai deploys as evidence of its vitality. The informational architecture, the specific, carefully constructed system by which Dubai has always managed the relationship between what is happening and what is reported as happening. Dubai does not have a free press in the conventional sense. The media organizations that operate in Dubai operate within a framework that has specific parameters regarding the coverage of government policy, economic performance, and anything that could be construed as damaging to the Emirates' reputation or investment climate. This is not a secret. It is the known operating condition of journalism in the UAE, and every serious journalist who works in Dubai understands it and navigates it. The navigated framework means that the data points which, assembled correctly, would have told the story of 3 million departing expats were available individually but not assembled. The school withdrawal numbers were in the Education Ministry's database. The visa cancellations were in the Immigration Authority's system. The lease terminations were in the Real Estate Regulatory Authority's records. The business deregistrations were in the Free Zone and Mainland Registry filings. Each dataset existed. None of them were assembled into the composite picture that the composite picture would have produced. Because the composite picture is the secret. The individual data points are administrative records. The composite is a story that the government could not tell without triggering the consequences that the government was managing by not telling it. The information architecture held for as long as it held because the institutions that held the individual data points had no mechanism and no incentive to share them with each other in a way that produced the composite. The Education Ministry tracks enrollment. The Immigration Authority tracks visas. The Real Estate Regulator tracks transactions. None of them tracks the story that emerges when you put all three on the same page. Someone put them on the same page 2 hours ago. And the secret ended. 3 million is a number that requires decomposition to be understood. 3 million is not a uniform block of humanity, and it is a specific population with a specific composition and a specific departure timeline that, when examined carefully, tells the story of a city losing itself in layers. The first layer to depart, the layer whose departure began in the weeks immediately following February 28, 2026. was the financial layer. The hedge fund managers, the family office executives, the private bankers, the corporate finance directors of the multinational regional headquarters concentrated in the DIFC. These were approximately 200,000 people, small in number, enormous in economic weight, disproportionate in their impact on the commercial ecosystem that depended on their presence. When the financial layer departed, it did not simply remove 200,000 people from the population count. It removed the demand that those 200,000 people generated across the entire service economy. The restaurants they filled, the luxury retail they sustained, the school fees they paid, the real estate they owned and maintained, the private clubs they membered, the professional services firms, the accountants and the lawyers and the consultants that they retained. Each departing financial professional removed themselves and the commercial footprint that their presence had generated. The second layer, numerically larger and economically broader, was the corporate expatriate layer. The senior and mid-level employees of the multinational corporations that maintained regional operations in Dubai Internet City and Dubai Media City, and the various free zones that constitute Dubai's diversified corporate ecosystem. These were approximately 800,000 people, including their families, whose presence was tied to employment contracts that corporate security departments began activating or not renewing following February 28th. The corporate expatriate departure was systematic in a way that individual departures are not. It followed corporate protocols, security assessments, duty of care frameworks, the specific institutional machinery of multinational corporations managing their geographic risk exposure. When a corporation decides that its regional hub should shift from Dubai to Singapore, or from Dubai to Riyadh, or from Dubai to any jurisdiction that its security assessment rates more favorably, the departure of its employees is not optional. They go where the corporation sends them, and the corporation began sending them elsewhere in the months following February. The third layer, the largest numerically and the most visible in the airport footage, was what the sociologists of migration call the secondary departure. The people who leave not because of a direct calculation about their own safety or their own employment, but because the people around them are leaving, because the school that their children attended is contracting, because the restaurant that they owned has lost the customers that made it viable, because the neighborhood that they lived in has passed a threshold of vacancy and disinvestment that makes continued residence feel like a choice to stay in a declining place rather than a choice to stay in a thriving one. These were approximately 2 million people. The service sector workers, whose employment depended on the financial and corporate layers, the small business owners whose revenue depended on the population density that the financial and corporate layers maintained, the residents who had built their lives around a community that the earlier departures had already begun to dissolve. They departed last. They are the 3 million. The leak 2 hours ago was not a single document. It was the convergence of multiple data streams that individually were administrative and collectively were devastating. The first stream was the visa cancellation data from the Federal Authority for Identity, Citizenship, Customs, and Port Security. Visa cancellations in the UAE are a matter of administrative record. Every canceled visa generates a record. Every canceled visa represents a person who was legally resident and is no longer legally resident. The cancellation data for the 12 months following February 28, 2026, assembled for the first time into a single document by an analyst whose identity has not been confirmed, showed a number of canceled residency visas that, when set against the population figure of 4.1 million, that was the official count as of August 2025, produced the 3 million figure. Not 3 million cancellations in 1 month. 3 million net departures, cancellations minus new issuances, over a 12-month window. The number of people who stopped being legally resident in Dubai exceeded the number of people who became newly legally resident by 3 million over the 12 months that followed the February strikes. The second stream was the school enrollment data. The cumulative enrollment figures from Dubai's international school sector, assembled from the individual reporting obligations that schools have to the Knowledge and Human Development Authority, showed a decline in enrolled students that was consistent with the departure of families at the scale the visa data implied. Not every departing adult had children in school, but the children who were in school and are no longer in school map precisely onto the family departure curve that the visa data describes. The third stream was the utility connection data. And Dubai Electricity and Water Authority maintains records of active utility connections. Active connections represent occupied residences. Disconnected connections represent vacated ones. The DUA data showed a disconnection rate in the 12 months following February that, when mapped against the residential property stock, produced an active occupancy rate that was consistent with the departure of 3 million people and inconsistent with any alternative explanation. 3 independent data streams. One number: 3 million. The secret was not that the data existed. The secret was that nobody had assembled it. Until 2 hours ago when somebody did. The silence is the most important part of the secret. Not the departure, the silence. Understanding why nobody is saying why requires understanding what saying why would cost each of the parties who knows why and has chosen not to say it. The government is not saying why because saying why requires acknowledging that the product it has been selling, the unconditional safety of Dubai as an address, was damaged in a way that is not repairable by the standard tools available to a government that has no peer in the world at deploying those tools. Lowering the investment threshold for the golden visa when 3 million people have left because they no longer believe the safety guarantee is like offering a discount on a product whose quality failure has been publicly confirmed. The discount does not address the quality failure. It advertises it. Saying why requires the government to have a conversation it has never had publicly. The conversation about what Dubai is without the unconditional safety premium. What it sells when the primary product is compromised. What the value proposition looks like when Singapore and Zurich and Lisbon are offering the same infrastructure quality and the same regulatory sophistication and the same tax efficiency at a lower geopolitical risk premium. That conversation is the most important conversation Dubai's leadership has ever needed to have. It is also the conversation whose public occurrence would accelerate the departure of the residents who are still there. So it is being had privately, in the rooms that the public does not enter.